Srimad His Divine Grace, Terabai Charanara Bhakti Swami Kosi Vaishnava Skandiviti Foundation His Divine Grace of Prabhupada Anasarya Sri Haridas Thakur Samavat Bhakti Vrinda Ki Harinam Sankirtan Ki Nantaras Nakavati Tani Tagore Timanandi. All that is to be assembled devotees. All that is to be assembled devotees. All that is to be assembled devotees. All that is to Sri Guru to Sri Gauranga. All that is to Sri Prabhupada. Okay, like that. You can see. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Tatsurimiritam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Savikam Jena Bhuktale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadadikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tvam Sadivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vitakam Vitam Shah Hare Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Saptakantana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavadeshwari Shri Shabanu Sute Devi Pranamami Vanchakalvarniyasya Vipasindhu Jayevacha Vadikanam Pavaniyo Vaishnaveyo Narayanam Namakritya Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam For reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very means of conquest, let us first offer our respectful obeisances unto Narayana, Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Sri Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Praya Savadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Tamasloke Bhaktir Bhavatanashiki. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering a service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed, practically to nil, and loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Brahmasamhitam Uttama-sloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Vishreyasaya Lokasya Dhanyam Swashayanam Mahat. This Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Grantaraj, the king of all literatures, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God as Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhara, Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Rama Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Sarabhyay Namaha.
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 Sankroti Vasanam Pangum Langayate Girim Yadripat Mahapande Sri Varam Vinataranam Yadripat Mahapande Sri Varam Vinataranam. Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone to our Bhagavatam class. My cell phone, so we can bring myself and my glasses. Forgetfulness is our main disease in Kali Yuga. So we are reading from the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 2, entitled Divinity and Divine Service. We are actually the whole chapter is full of very important verses, and we're just entering one of those sections that has 5 verses, often quoted by Srila Prabhupada. Coming up, after a few verses. So today's text is 13, 1-3. Yes. Let's see, somehow the correct. Yesterday we did 11. Somehow the marker was a few verses past that. So we are reading 12 today, right? Yeah. Text number 12, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 12. Tat Shraddhanaha Munayo Jnana Vairagya Yuktaya Pashanti Atmani Chatmanam Bhaktya Shruta Grihitaya Tat Shraddhana Munayo Jnana Vairagya Yuktaya Pashantyatmani Chatmanam Bhaktya Shruta Grihitaya Tat Shraddhana Munayo Jnana Vairagya Yuktaya Pashantyatmani Chatmanam Bhaktya Shruta Grihitaya Tat Shraddhana Munayo Jnana Vairagya Yuktaya Pashantyatmani Chatmanam Bhaktya Shruta Grihitaya
Shraddhana Munayo Jnana Vairagya Yuktaya Pashyanti Atmani Chatmanam Bhaktya Shruta Grihitaya Shraddhana Munayo वैराग्ययुक्तया
ज्ञानवैराग्ययुक्तया
पश्यन्ते आत्मनि चात्मानं
पश्यन्त्यात्मनि चात्मानं
भक्त्या श्रुतगृहीतया
भक्त्या श्रुतगृहीतया
तश्रद्धाना मुनयो
तत्सद्धानामुनयो
ज्ञान वैराग्ययुक्तया
ज्ञानवैराग्ययुक्तया
पश्यन्ति आत्मनि चात्मानं
पश्यन्त्यात्मनि चात्मानं
भक्त्या श्रुतगृहीतया
भक्त्या श्रुतगृहीतया तत्सद्धानामुनयो ज्ञानवैराग्ययुक्तया पश्यन्त्यात्मनि चात्मानं भक्त्या श्रुतगृहीतया तत्सद्धानामुनयो ज्ञानवैराग्ययुक्तया पश्यन्त्यात्मनि चात्मानं भक्त्या श्रुतगृहीतया
that Shraddhana, seriously inquisitive, Munaya, sages, Jnana, knowledge, Vairagya, detachment, Yuktaya, well equipped with, Pashanti, see, Atmani, within himself, Cha, and Atmanam, the Paramatma, Bhaktya, in devotional service, Sruta, the Vedas, Grihitaya, well received. Translation and purport of Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. The seriously inquisitive student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes the absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedanta Shruti. Kindly repeat after me. The seriously inquisitive student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes that absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedanta Shruti. Report. The absolute truth is realized in full by the process of devotional service to the Lord, Vasudeva, or the personality of Godhead, who is full-fledged absolute, who is the full-fledged absolute truth. Brahman is his transcendental bodily effulgence, and Paramatma is his partial representation. As such, Brahman or Paramatma realization of the absolute truth is but a partial realization. And there are 4 different types of human beings: the karmis, the jnanis, the yogis, and the devotees. The karmis are materialistic, whereas the other 3 are transcendental. The first class transcendentalists are the devotees who have realized the Supreme Person. The second class transcendentalists are those who have partially realized the plenary portion of the absolute person. And the third class transcendentalists are those who have barely realized the spiritual focus of the absolute person. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures, the Supreme Person is realized by devotional service, which is backed by full knowledge and detachment from material association. We have already discussed the point that devotional service is followed by knowledge and detachment from material association. As Brahman and Paramatma realization are important realizations of the absolute truth, so the means of realizing Brahman and Paramatma, that is, the paths of Jnana and Yoga, are also imperfect means of realizing the absolute truth. Devotional service, which is based on the foreground of full knowledge, combined with detachment from material association, and which is fixed by the oral reception of the Vedanta Shruti, is the only perfect method by which the seriously inquisitive student can realize the absolute truth. Devotional service is not, therefore, meant for the less intelligent class of transcendentalists. There are three classes of devotees, namely first, second, and third class. The third class devotees are the neophytes who have no knowledge and are not detached from material association, but who are simply attracted by the preliminary process of worshiping the deity in the temple, are called material devotees. Material devotees are more attached to material benefit than transcendental profit. Therefore, one has to make definite progress from the position of material devotional service to the second class devotional position. In the second class position, the devotee can see four principles in the devotional line, namely the personality of Godhead, the ignorant, and the envious. One has to raise himself at least to the stage of a second class devotee and thus become eligible to know the absolute truth. But many important instructions are being given in the purport, and we've only gone through half of the purport already. So just to comment a little bit here. Yesterday, actually, we read a very important verse, which is especially describing Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is that book of knowledge that very clearly, very nicely, very perfectly analyzes and describes the nature of the absolute truth, which is known as referred to here in this purport as well as Brahman realization, Paramatma realization, and Bhagavan realization. One of the important statements made here is that there's a particular process, there's a very specific process that we need to adopt in order to actually be able to realize this absolute truth. And that process is what we as devotees especially focus upon. That process is the process of bhakti, or devotional service. Later on, there's a nice verse explaining how Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Dhanayati Ashubhairagyam Gyanam Chaya Dahaitukam. Same message is being conveyed. This is the Vedic process, that the same message, the same absolute truth is repeatedly explained and confirmed and reconfirmed in so many other verses or statements. So in this way, we can easily come to understand that it is bona fide knowledge, and the same concepts are being explained from different angles of vision to further help us understand the subject matter. So therefore, it is also stated in the first canto of the Bhagavatam how, in this chapter actually later on, how this is only possible. This level of bhakti or devotional service, these activities of devotional service can only be properly performed when one is situated in the mode of goodness, isn't it? So there's a whole series of verses coming up that explain how we can gradually raise our consciousness from the lower levels of tamas, tamagun, and rajagun, to at least become situated on the level of the mode of goodness. The whole Vedic culture is arranged in such a way that where we live, what activities we take up, what work we do, are all meant to facilitate our coming to the mode of goodness. You see. And if we look at modern day situation, actually the opposite is there. It is very much focused on rajas, both rajas and tamas, rajasic activities and those that are also in the mode of ignorance. Srila Prabhupada also mentions how the process is, he mentions, that's in the text also, by hearing Vedanta literatures, Vedanta Shruti, our process, especially as mentioned, nicely described by the Goswamis of Vrindavan, is the process of hearing. Srimbatam Swakatha Krishna Shruti Shastra, which give us in detail transcendental knowledge. Prabhupada speaks about 4 classes of men, 4 classes of people: karmis, jnanis, yogis, and devotees. Explaining how within these 4 categories, one is primarily materialistic, the karmis, and the other 3 are transcendentalists, means they are in search of something that is beyond material activities. And then Prabhupada also explains about 3 types of devotees. We have read about, he has explained in the purport so far. The the two lower levels of devotees. They are known as Kanista Adhikari, Madhyam Adhikari, and Uttama Adhikari. We'll be hearing in the second portion of the purport the description of the Uttama Adhikari. Prabhupada is making an important statement that the Kanista Adhikari, also known as materialistic devotee, it is a very not so secure level. Prabhupada often would remind us, at least we should make an endeavor. And of course, the word is used both in the text and in the purport. One needs to become a serious, one should be seriously inquisitive about the subject matter of spiritual life, of the absolute truth. So generally, those who are kanista or materialistic devotees, they lack in seriousness, and therefore, very often they will remain on that platform, which is a very dangerous platform because one has very less knowledge. The two characteristics of a kanista adhikari or materialistic devotee is that his faith is very less and he doesn't know very much about Shastra. So therefore, he can easily be defeated in argument and he can abandon, he can give up the practice of devotional service. Therefore, the more secure level, which is also described in other places as the preaching level, is that of Madhyam Adhikari. Madhyam Adhikari, as mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in the purport, understand basically four things. He knows the importance of the devotees and seeks always their good association. He knows about those who are innocent, who are not knowing about spiritual life and endeavors to bring knowledge. Those who are envious means those who are against Krishna consciousness and therefore avoids those persons. So in this way, there are different persons with whom he relates to in different ways. We'll hear a little bit about the description of a third, we can say first class devotee or topmost devotee. So the next paragraph is as follows. A third class devotee therefore has to receive the instructions of devotional service from the authoritative sources of Bhagavatam. The number one Bhagavatam is the established personality of the devotee, and the other Bhagavatam is the message of Godhead. The third class devotee has to go to the personality of devotee in order to learn the instructions of devotional service. So Prabhupada is still talking about the Kanista Adhikari. And of course, referring that those on the lower level naturally need to associate with both Madhyam Adhikari as well as Uttama Adhikari. Such a personality of devotee is not a professional man who earns his livelihood by the business of Bhagavatam. Such a devotee must be a representative of Shukadeva Goswami, like Sutta Goswami, and must preach the cult of devotional service for the all-around benefit of all people. This is an important point. We were touching on that the other day, how our line, our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, is especially focused on preaching, isn't it? We are primarily a preaching movement, also known as Gosti Anandis, as opposed to Bhajan Anandis, are especially preoccupied with the fallen conditions of the people, and therefore endeavor in so many different ways to bring Krishna consciousness to people. A neophyte devotee has very little taste for hearing from the authorities. Such a neophyte devotee makes a show of hearing from the professional man to satisfy his senses. But this sort of hearing and chanting has spoiled the whole thing. So one should be very careful about the faulty process. Many times Srila Prabhupada warns against hearing from unauthorized persons, which is something that takes place a lot in India, especially. Hearing from professional reciters. The holy messages of Godhead, as inculcated in the Bhagavad Gita or in the Srimad Bhagavatam, are undoubtedly transcendental subjects. But even though they are so, such transcendental matters are not to be received from the professional man who spoils them as the serpent spoils milk simply by the touch of his tongue. And the last paragraph of this somewhat long purport. A sincere devotee must therefore be prepared to hear the Vedic literature like the Upanishads, Vedanta, and other literatures left by the previous authorities or Goswamis for the benefit of his progress. So this is an important point also. Sometimes devotees will prematurely conclude that no, Prabhupada didn't want us to read other books. He gave us, of course, Prabhupada gave us everything in terms of the translation of especially Srimad Bhagavatam and other literatures. But as we see here and other places as well, Srila Prabhupada was very much encouraging that we read other authorized Vedic literatures. The Goswamis of Vrindavan have left innumerable literatures. They were pointing out how just one personality like Srila Bhakti Thakur himself wrote so many literatures that we don't have sufficient time in one lifetime to actually read them. Even to read Prabhupada's books as well. One needs to be selective. There are dangers in reading certain books. Prabhupada did prohibit us from reading prematurely certain literatures. I came to know some years back how in Vrindavan, very interesting actually, they have what is called a Grantha Samadhi. You know what that? Grantha Samadhi. Grantha means like Grantha Rashvan Bhagavatam. Grantha means Vedic literatures, scriptures. And Grantha Samadhi means there are certain literatures written by the Goswami that are so profound and that just like go over our head that those who are in the position of acharyas, at one particular point, I don't know the details of how that happened, decided that these particular books, it's better if people not read them, and they put them in samadhi. Like we put people in samadhi. It means the subject matter of the absolute truth has been especially very, it's a very deep subject matter. There's a word that describes that, esoteric. Esoteric means very high, very fine, and not so easy to understand. But so therefore, one should study. That is very important part of the process. One should study under the guidance and direction of authorized personalities. Therefore, that is an integral part of what Krishna teaches as well in the Bhagavad Gita, the whole system of Guru Parampara. We should receive knowledge from the bona fide representative. And yeah. We'll just finish this section here. Without hearing such literatures, one cannot make actual progress. And without hearing and following the instructions, the show of devotional service becomes worthless, and therefore a sort of disturbance in the path of devotional service. Unless, therefore, devotional service is established on the principles of Shruti, Smriti, Purana, and Pancharatra authorities, the make-show devotional service should be at once be rejected. An unauthorized devotee should never be recognized as a pure devotee. By assimilation of such messages from the Vedic literatures, one can see the all-pervading, localized aspect of the personality of Godhead within his own self constantly. This is called samadhi. The Prabhupada speaks about samadhi in different contexts. This reference here is in terms of when one sufficiently hears from authorized literatures, when one attentively hears and applies what one hears, then one will be able to, as explained by our Goswamis of Vrindavan, Vishnu Smaranam, Sravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. The process of hearing and chanting will naturally, automatically lead us to the level of remembering. And Prabhupada explains that is, the more we are able to accomplish this, this is samadhi. In another context, Prabhupada also explains how samadhi is being absorbed in preaching the message of the Lord. That is another process by which one can actually become situated in samadhi. Samadhi means actually being very focused, intently focused on some aspect of the absolute truth. Those who are on the highest platform of bhakti, we call the Paramahamsas or the Uttamadhikari, they are constantly immersed in remembering the Lord, not only in remembering the Lord, but also we have very vivid examples of the Goswamis in Vrindavan, who had attained already the perfectional stage of what is called Swarup Siddhi. Swarup Siddhi is when one comes to know about his spiritual identity in the spiritual world, and although still situated in the material world, starts to perform or take up activities in relation to one's spiritual identity. It's something that is very that cannot be imitated, but that is the position of such personalities. Srila Prabhupada explains how we can begin to experience this type of samadhi simply by becoming absorbed in our devotional activities, and especially in the matter of preaching, of understanding that we are part of the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And as Prabhupada himself demonstrated, Srila Prabhupada was, always in samadhi, in both, we could say, in both ways, in terms of being in contact with Krishna, remembering Krishna, seeing Krishna, and as well as being in samadhi by preaching the message of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by executing the order of his spiritual master, and very extensively, as we know, introducing the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this point, which is made at the very beginning of the purport, is also very important, that it is through activities, through the process of devotional service, that we will be able to gradually realize the absolute truth. And that realization of the absolute truth will be possible, will be made possible by the intervention of Krishna. We cannot just by our own self come to that level. This is also further confirmed in this chapter as well. Evam prasanamanaso Bhagavat Bhakti Jo Vidaha Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam Mukta Sangha Siddhayati. Spiritual life must lead us to the level of Vijnan. It's very important actually, because this level of Vijnan can only be attained from the level of Madhyamadikari. At the level of Kanishadikari, Vijnan, one will not get Vijnan, because one is not properly situated. One is one's consciousness is still very much materialistic. So this level of Vijnan is what will nourish actually a devotee, isn't it? So that verse is nicely explaining when we become fixed up in a mode of goodness. What is the symptom of one who is fixed in devotional service? There are many symptoms, but one important symptom. Means his mind becomes very peaceful. Peace of mind. Very, people some people pay a lot of money to people go and see psychiatrists or psychologists or whatnot. My mind, of course, devotees also, we are all struggling with our mind, but the idea is that the more we become fixed in the mode of goodness, the mind, that is the characteristic or the symptom, the mind will become peaceful. And it is only, this verse is nicely explaining, only when our mind is peaceful, we can nicely engage in activities of devotional service. We will know what our duties are. We will be attentive in performing our service. And in this way, by nicely performing devotional service, we will please, for example, if we are in a temple, we will please our authorities by doing our seva properly, and especially we will please Krishna, because ultimately we're performing our devotional activities to please Krishna. And it is when Krishna becomes pleased. Prabhupada used to remind us many times, you don't try to see Krishna. You arrange your activities in such a way that Krishna will see you. That Krishna will notice that you're serious about spiritual life, that you're serious about helping and assisting in spreading his mission, isn't it? So this is the mood or the mentality that Srila Prabhupada has pointed out. We should not, because sometimes devotees in the neophyte level, they just, I want to see Krishna, I want to be with Krishna. I mean, that's very nice, but the idea is that this level will gradually and automatically come in due course of time. We should rather be preoccupied how I can serve Krishna, how I can serve Krishna's mission, how I can serve Krishna's devotees. And the more we develop this type of, it's referred to as service attitude, something very important. We all need to develop more and more this natural tendency of seva, because that's our constitutional provision. And we can see actually when we deal with different, when we go to different places and mingle or associate with devotees, we can see those who are, eager to serve, those who have that natural inclination. Even though it may not be natural initially, we should know that by the more we endeavor this way, it will actually come in a natural way. That is the whole process of bhakti. Initially, through sadhana, through rules and regulations, our consciousness gradually becomes more and more purified. Then we come to the higher levels like that. Maybe I'll just read the text again. If there's any comments or questions, we can take a little bit of time for that. So our text, number 12, the seriously inquisitive student. Not only inquisitive student, but the seriously inquisitive student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes that absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedanta Shruti. And what we have heard from the Vedanta Shruti means from the literatures, needs to be heard through a bona fide representative who has himself followed that same process and who is nicely engaged in devotional service. Any comments on the question?
What happens when one doesn't have detachment?
When one does not have detachment.
Like when we study. Not developing detachment.
Well, it takes some time for one to become fully detached. If one is a householder, he has certain responsibilities. There are different levels of detachment actual detachment means to be less and less hankering for ultimately material sense gratification, and to learn to become more and more happy and satisfied by performing our duties, our responsibilities, even though we may not have or experience natural attraction for those. So it's a gradual process. Detachment will come. We are reading here that the more we hear, the more we take up to the process, these two things will automatically come. Knowledge, more and more, let's say, realized knowledge, and then gradually detachment from material things.
Does austerity, does performing austerity help in the
Whether performance of austerities, not the kind of austerity that we may generally think about. What will bring about more easily, more quickly, detachment, as mentioned here, are activities of bhakti. The more we engage in devotional activities, which include, of course, being absorbed in increasing activities, then it's not by other processes can help, but actually the recommended and the most effective and powerful means or process is by engaging in different activities of devotional service. That verse we were quoting a little while ago. Automatically, this jnanam and vairagya, knowledge, transcendental knowledge and detachment, comes to those who are seriously engaged in activities of devotional service. That verse, Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Pariyojitaha, automatically knowledge and detachment. Other processes will take more time. They're also bona fide, performing jagya, different sacrifices, performing austerities. Our austerity as devotees is to follow the basic principles in Krishna consciousness, and to, in our case, as followers, disciples, grand disciples of our founder Acharya, this is nicely explained also in the Shastra. The more we can understand the intent or the mood and the instructions given by our founder Acharya, then the more we will become eligible to receive the mercy. Without mercy from Vaishnavas, without mercy from Krishna, any activity we perform will not bear the desired result. So when Krishna sees that we are endeavoring through different activities of devotional service, especially in the matter of assisting this mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Prabhupada's mission, then becoming pleased upon us, they will help us become more detached, more advanced.
we talk about the mercy of the devotees? So there are all levels of devotees.
Yes. So mercy of devotees means mercy of devotees comes from those who are more seriously engaged in devotional activity. So therefore, we should seek out the good association of, let's mention by Srila Prabhupada in the, I believe, Nectar of Instruction. We should be selective in our association, even amongst devotees. Mahaprabhu instructed us, satsanga tyaga e vaishnavacha. We should give up the association of what is a sat. And even within, let's say, community of devotees, we should be selective, because not as we are reading now. You know, so many people are wearing tilak, but they are situated at different levels. We must differentiate between Madhyam, Kanishta, Madhyam, and Uttam Adhikari. And accordingly, seek out those devotees who are more nicely engaged, more seriously engaged in their practice of devotional service, etc. We must have that sense of discrimination. Of course, we respect anyone, that is also nicely explained, anyone who chants the holy name, we give all respect, but we should especially seek out the association of those who are more advanced, more attached in serving the devotees and serving the mission.
From Kanishta to Madhyam.
How to transform from Kanishta to Madhyam. Very eager to advance. Yeah, we should follow what we should hear. Prabhupada stresses this point a lot, that especially those who are householders, because in householder life there are many distractions. True or not true? I heard. I've seen also. There are there are more distractions because all kinds of different family responsibilities, social responsibilities that are there. So therefore, Prabhupada again and again stresses that householders should go on again and again and again hearing. I mean, it absolutely must be a daily affair, a daily activity, as much as possible. And that's why Vedic culture is we've been talking about simple life, simple living, for that very purpose of giving us extra time. Of course, some devotees will say, well, to do that, I don't think I'll have time to chant around. That's because the situation has not yet been created where when things are in proper place, just like there's a nice video, very interesting, one person from Thailand, you might have seen this video, it was a TED talk actually, who was kind of sharing his experience. He was from a village in Thailand, and he had been encouraged that you should go to get a higher education. You should go to Bangkok, join the university, and like that. So he did that. But after some time, he wasn't feeling that he was in the right place, and he was beginning to understand that even if I get an education, he was observing people who had gone through the process. They end up, although graduating, then they because they want to have some nice arrangement as soon as possible, so they end up borrowing money. They get money on credit, so they have a nice house. They have so many nice things, but it's all on credit. I mean, that's the situation for most people. So, anyways, before finishing his studies, he decided, no, I'm not going to pursue this. He went back to his village, and he started. He's not a devotee, but it shows, it's very much in line with what Prabhupada is speaking about. He ended up he had some land somehow, possibly from the family he inherited, and he began. So he was explaining to his audience that now I have this land. I've been working for the last few years, and I have some. I only work a few hours a day, and I'm able to meet to have what I need. I learned to make simple house dwellings. So on the land, he said, in the last 2 years, I made 3 houses. Now my problem is, I don't know which house I should sleep in. That's the kind of problem he has. As opposed to people who can't pay their rent, or because, in other words, he's a very simple kind of person, and simplicity we hear all the time is actually a very important quality that one should have, which is totally the opposite of what is existing. So he was getting his point across. Actually, he was making his own clothes. He was he was telling people think I'm weird. He says, but I don't mind because I think they're weird. Like that article that appeared many years ago in the back of Godhead magazine entitled, "Who is crazy?" Materialistic people, karmis, think that devotees are crazy, isn't it? And very often they'll point out also, who are these people, why they're doing this, why they're, especially in the Western countries. In India, people wearing devotional clothes and tilak is acceptable as part of the culture, but outside of India, it's totally alien, People think you're coming from another planet or something. So who is crazy? I mean, the people accuse devotees of being crazy, even today. But those who are cultivating this knowledge know who actually is crazy. Anyone who is not understanding who he is, who is not a devotee, that person is still covered by ignorance, etc. So that was a nice example. That particular person was showing how when he demonstrated also, so much so that actually his place became like an ashram. And even to this day, I have not been there, but he came to India actually a few years back, and some of our devotees gave him a Bhagavad Gita, and he was quite receptive. I think he probably didn't know about Vedic culture so much, but he came to India, so definitely he must have picked up on different things. Somehow met the devotees, and I don't know, maybe I'll check him out next time when I go to find out. But Krishna arranges in different ways. It's not only people who Krishna is in the heart of all living entities, and he makes different arrangements for those who are actually sincere, who want to know, who want to understand, to advance ultimately towards realizing, knowing about Krishna. But for some people it might take more time, but in his particular case, he was showing positive signs, and it just, he did come to India, and he now has Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, so definitely that's a big plus for him. Okay, yeah. You can close for now. Yes. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jai Prabhupada ki jai. But previously, when this was shown, it's like the full picture was there.
There's some ginger tea there.